You are listening to the Faces for the Future podcast, a podcast dedicated to exploring the stories of young creatives. My name is Jacob Deere. I'm a documentary photographer, publisher, and visual artist, and I'm going to be sitting down with creators to listen to their inspiration, interests, and process, hearing the lessons they have learned and how they broke out of the mold. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Faces for the Future podcast. I can't believe we're already on episode 6. Absolutely storming through these podcasts, and I'm loving every second of speaking with these creators. On this episode today, I am joined by my business partner, my friend, and also fellow documentary photographer. His name is Mike Butt. In this podcast, we speak about his previous projects such as Sparrow Home Straight and also work that he is producing at the moment whilst in isolation. It's a really interesting conversation hearing what Mike has to say about the situation in isolation and also how that he is using his work to move forward through it and staying positive. Yeah, nice insight in there. I think that's kind of what I want from this podcast, is to give people an insight into other creators, even if you're not creative, just being able to listen to how other people go about their lives and find inspiration. I think because I wanted to do it for ages, and then you suddenly must have just been like, boom, I'll do it during lockdown. Literally, it was one of those things where I've been toying with doing it for so long. Yeah. And it was like, I've got everything I need: microphone, lights, laptops, everything I need to record a podcast. And then I was just like, you know what, fuck it. It's lockdown. I got nothing better to do. I'm at home recovering from surgery. Let's just do a podcast. So I just pulled the trigger and just started it. And yeah, this is your episode 6, so we're 6 in already. Yeah, it's going well so far. It's having a good reaction, which is what we want. Pardon? When does it go live? Wednesdays and Thursdays, isn't it? Yeah, Wednesdays and Thursdays, but I'm thinking about changing it and doing 3 times a week, so Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, maybe Friday. But I'm going to stick to the schedule this week. But yeah, eventually I'm building. This is a little insider secret. I'm building a podcast studio as we talk here at home. Nice. So I'll be able to, once the lockdown's over and we can all interact physically again. That'd be so good. Yeah, man. So I can get people over and we can actually shoot a proper podcast. Such a good idea. So hopefully that will be. I was going to say, you got the badass mic there, mate. That's like. Surprisingly, I actually bought this microphone. It sounds kind of stupid, but I bought it for playing video games years ago. Because I used to play Call of Duty semi-professionally, and so everybody was telling me to get a good quality microphone to be able to communicate easier. So I bought this, and then it was I started using it for film projects and then voiceover, and yeah, it just sort of sat complacent in a drawer for a while. Proper clean, bro. I can hear you really well. There's no feedback or reverberation. And it actually only cost me, if I remember right at the time, I think it was 40 quid, which isn't bad. For a microphone. It's a blue snowball, I think it's called. It's considered one of the better cheap microphones. Yeah, it looks nice. You look like Joe Rogan, mate. I just need to shave the head. That's all I need to do, and then we're there. Good idea. Oh, mate. I went for a run yesterday. Yeah. And I'm not even kidding. I cannot walk today. It's first time I'd been for a run in 5 weeks. You must have played up after your surgery now. Yeah. So stitches have been out for about 2 weeks roughly. Everything is healed. I would show a picture of my scar, but I don't think people want to see my arse. And yeah, so it all seems to be healed up. So yeah, getting back on the grind, getting running. You're lucky, aren't you? Because obviously with all the coronavirus. I was about to drop the Cardi B as well. Yeah, honestly, I was the last day they were doing surgeries. Right. The day after me, they stopped all sort of primary surgery, so people that didn't need sort of emergency surgeries, were cancelled. So I was the last day, and I was one of 2 people that day because they had cancelled everybody else bar me and this other older chap.
You would have had to wait of what, 6 months after that?
Easily. I saw my surgeon a few weeks ago to get the stitches out, and I asked him, and I said, if I didn't have it done, when would I be able to, in theory? He said, honestly, probably not till next year.
Blimey.
So, yeah, I got really lucky to get it done when I did.
Especially with the coronavirus, I would never go into hospital, with it going on.
Yeah, honestly, it was, when I went to get the stitches out a few weeks back, it was weird. It was really weird being in the hospital because... I think the day before, so the hospital that we're talking about, everybody listening and watching, is Western General Hospital. Is the closest one to me. And when I went in to get the stitches out, it was empty. Everybody was really, really taking this virus seriously, and that was only 4 weeks after my surgery, where when I went in for my surgery, everybody was just walking around like it's normal. It wasn't a big deal.
I was on a photo shoot because I was shooting my final major project at the time, obviously around blindness, and I thought, because I didn't see the virus coming. I knew it was there because it was over Christmas time. I think it was kind of coming through China and everything. Yeah. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, I go to this lady's house, and I say, "Oh, can I take your phone?" I go to shake her hand. Yeah. And I'm like, flip neck, here we go. Yeah, so I shake her hand, and she's like, "Have you got germs?" And I was like, what? And it's out this antibacterial, stuff over my hand.
Yeah.
You can come in now. And I was like, thank you.
That's mad. I think the thing with it is, you can see the people that took it seriously to begin with now, can't you? There's so many, and this is no critique of anyone, which I'm sure people might take out of context, but some people just thought it was going to be the flu and it was going to just pass. Yeah, it's like... If you had been watching it and looking at it since it broke out in China, it's like, yeah, this ain't the flu. This is way worse than that. But, fingers crossed, it looks like we're, hopefully over the worst of it potentially in the next week or so.
Because it has affected quite a few things. I don't know, for yourself, obviously, you're an active guy, aren't you? So staying at home's not really what you want to do.
Yeah, it was. I think the thing with it is my surgery came at the right time, though. Because if I hadn't had surgery when I did, and we didn't go into lockdown, I think the likelihood is I probably would have started running a few weeks ago and being way too active and not letting it heal. Because, as yourself knows firsthand, sitting around isn't really my cup of tea. I don't like the television. I don't like sofas. I don't like anything that means sitting for more than an hour. This podcast can be tricky sometimes.
It's kind of like having to adapt because our whole of the system of grading at uni, because obviously towards the end of it was all got switched up. So it's put me in a position where I have to think creatively. I have to suddenly think on my feet. So I've had to put one project on the back burner, and then now I'm focusing on just isolation in the everyday. But it is crazy when you reflect on it how much we take for granted, just meeting friends out and about, family.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the thing with it is I think now sitting down and having a chat with yourself, it's it was only 3 months ago we were both in Cheltenham. I was just moving out, and it's we were just chilling and hanging out in the town, and it's 3 months later, it's crazy how much it's changed, and definitely how much we take for granted, especially as photographers, the ability to have freedom of movement and sort of go where we want and capture what we want.
Exactly. I had to take the executive decision to leave Cheltenham early because obviously that's where different cases were springing up, and I was like, I can't, because my mum's high risk. I can't take the risk of catching something and then not being able to come home.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was like, I'm going to come home now, but that means I'm not living in Cheltenham anymore, and the whole university experience ended abruptly.
I was going to say, for yourself, was it you know, when I moved out of Cheltenham, it was a little bit different because obviously this wasn't going on, this crisis, so I was able to have that, you know, somewhat closure of leaving Cheltenham and that sort of chapter in my life. But for yourself, that must feel quite
it's odd.
Yeah, it must feel like you sort of haven't actually finished. I know technically you haven't, but that chapter isn't over.
Yeah, it just like I think it was 3-4 weeks after you'd gone, because you'd only been back in Somerset a month and a bit.
Yeah, when you messaged me saying you had moved home, I was like, wait, what? Why?
I'm back.
Yeah, I was like, bro, you're not meant to be back till what, July?
I know. Well, it's funny because because obviously you know as well, there's lots of international students, and we all go all over the world to shoot our final stuff anyway. So Naomi, the Italian girl, you've met her.
Lovely girl.
Yeah. She went home to Italy, and then Miriam went home back to Germany, and then everyone was like gone, and they were like, "Oh, I think we've got to be cautious of this coronavirus, so just be careful with your limitations on what you can and can't shoot." So I was like, "Oh, I'm going to continue this project on blindness because I'm really interested in like sight and sight loss, and that's a whole other thing."
We can dive into that.
Yeah. So I was like, I was travelling backwards and forwards between Cheltenham and Somerset, and I was like, oh, okay, so what am I doing? And it was all right. And then suddenly it happened, and they were like, oh, we're shutting down all like face-to-face like contact, so there's no like tutor time, you can't go in and like get reviews, you can't use the facilities are still open. Well,
which is crazy.
Take it at your own risk. The library's obviously still open as well. So it kind of all happened, and then I moved out, and now I'm stuck at home. Like, obviously, great because I've got what I need, but I kind of enjoy that independence.
Yeah, it's something that has taken me a while to sort of get used to, but sort of readapt to living back at home, especially with parents. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, like I appreciate like everything I've been like given, but it is like that independence, like you say, you realise how much you like miss it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just being able to like when we were both living in Cheltenham, just be like, oh, do you want to chill out at 6 or something, and just go wake up and drink coffee till our brains fall out.
Yeah, tell me about it. I used to do that all the time. No, it's weird. Like, I think the time that you know, I was in Cheltenham for 18 months, I think it was. I think yourself was it a little bit longer? Or
3 years.
3 years, yeah. So, me and Mike was actually partly the reason why I decided to go to University of Gloucestershire to study my masters, actually. Because at the time I was looking at multiple different masters all over the country, UAL, University of Westminster, obviously all London based, because at the time I wanted to live in London, and now I just do not want to live in London. Anyways, and yeah, I had a conversation with Mike back in 2018, over a cup of coffee, of course, and
always the
way. And Mike sort of started speaking to me about UAG, the University of Gloucestershire, and the MA, and then that sort of snowballed in to applying. And I think from the initial conversation that we had,
it must have been like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was no more than 3, maybe 4 weeks from Mike telling me about UAG to me packing my car, moving to Cheltenham.
Well, I think I'd just gone back for the second term, so my second year in summer. And then I was there, and then you text me and you're like, "Oh, I'm here," and I was like, "What?" Yeah, moving in.
I literally
showed you the sites.
I know. I literally just pulled the trigger straight away. I was like, "Look, at the time for me, 2018 was a weird year," which I've explained before in the past on my Instagram story, etc., on social media, but. Yeah, really weird year for myself, going from, like a breakup and depression and suicidal attempts and stuff like that, and then moving to Cheltenham and studying my masters in a year. It was like 2018 was a bit of a blur, 2019 just as much, but we won't get into why that was.
The thing, like, on reflection now, being back in Somerset, like you realise actually what a good like university and like course it was. Like everything there for you, and like networking, like meeting people, like yourself, being able to like help you with creating a book, and then obviously that's where we set up Coverless. So it's crazy, like that whole hub of Cheltenham, like it's always labelled as a racing like city, town even, but there's a lot of creatives there, and I think it will boom soon.
Yeah, I think Cheltenham as a town, it's somewhat student based, and then somewhat wealth. It's got this weird. I was always interested in the town of Cheltenham being this weird, not divide. I don't know. Maybe there is a divide. I still, as you can tell, I haven't come to a conclusion on how I see Cheltenham after 17, 18 months. But yeah, I think being in the environment, all sort of students together, the MA course wasn't that big. There was, I think, split across 3 years. There was roughly sort of 30 students-ish, which isn't that many on for an MA. Whereas the BA, which Mike is on, I'm going to PJD, isn't it? Photojournalism. No,
documentary.
That's it. And Mike's course and the other BAs that are running at UOG, are much larger classes. And I studied my masters quite young. I started when I was 23, I think.
You're a snapper.
Yeah, little whippersnapper, mate. I started studying when I was 23, and obviously, BAs at the undergrad courses, it's sort of age range between 18, 19 up to sort of my age, sort of 24, 25. So I identified a lot more with the students on the BAs and the undergrads, but I also had the benefit of working with people on the master's course, which had a far-reaching and extensive knowledge of areas of photography and other things.
Isn't it?
And definitely, and I think that really definitely shaped me as an artist, as a photographer, and just my way of processing, making pictures, and other creative ventures such as Coverless. If you guys who are listening and watching don't know what Coverless is, it's actually mine and Mike's publishing company. Publishing company. Yeah,
published 3 zine magazines.
Yeah, definitely. It's changed, but that's it's gonna always evolve over time. That's how business works. But anyways, we started Coverless together. When did we start? 2018, 19?
Yeah, 18.
I think it was Christmas, wasn't it? I think it was Christmas 2018.
We'd just gone to obviously have coffee again.
Always.
And discuss the idea of obviously setting it up. And because we'd always wanted to do something, because it's weird because our paths must have crossed somewhere down the line.
I was going to ask you that, because you studied at UCW, didn't you?
I'll give you a little background. So I obviously, Jake was on the podcast the other week.
Yeah.
So obviously I studied with Jake at UCW. UCW? Yeah, UCW. Well, college, and then I went to UCW.
Yeah.
So I did 2 years there, photography, and then you were also, I remember you, because you were in the year 2 years above me, was it, or a year above me?
I think I was on my BA when you had just started your FDA.
Yeah,
because
you got that, didn't you?
Yeah, because so for me, I was at UCW, Western College, and then it moved to UCW. I think it's still called UCW. Shout out to Jamie if he ever listens to this podcast, and and Dan as well, my 2 lecturers. Anyways, I did 5 years at Western, so I did the BTEC, FDA, and BA top up back to back in a 5-year saga. So I learned. I was at Western College, UCW for a while, but to get back to the story, I'm pretty sure because did you study with Alex Fletcher?
Yes.
Yeah. So you must have just started the FDA as I was finishing my BA, I think.
Yeah, because then you went off and did obviously all your film stuff, didn't you?
Yeah,
so because I did 3 years there, and then I came out of there, and I had obviously my FDA, And then I was like, oh, I'd been working in photography and I love it, and I was shooting all the time. But I weighed up the idea of like, what are my prospects if I now leave here and go to here?
Mm.
At the time, I don't think Western had a recognition and a name to it.
Yeah.
I was sat down with Jamie and Sam, the tutors, and they were like, if you really want to push yourself as a creative and a person, it's better to sometimes have a name behind you.
Mm.
So I then thought, what aspects of photography do I like the most? And I love being able to like photograph people and meet people and tell people stories. So I was like, I'm going to really try and specialize in documentary.
Mm.
So then a few months later, I did the research and found UOG. Had an interview there, got a place, and that's where the story started with that, and obviously started to specialise. But the funny thing is, before all of this happened, I'd actually looked at UOG, not realising that it was the course that I'd later go on to, and actually turned them down for an interview. And so I could have been 3 years down the line, and I'd be working right now as a photographer.
So you'd be at the same sort of level as myself. Basically, you'd be ready to be going on to an MA or finishing an MA if you'd wanted to do it.
Everything happens for a reason, and
Definitely.
like, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have started Coverless, I wouldn't have made Self, and I wouldn't be like where I am now. So I think it was important that like everyone goes at their own pace.
Yeah, 100%.
Important at that time.
Yeah, I think everyone has their own journey. Mine was sort of scattered, to say the least. You know, I don't think I ever realised that this is going to sound a little bit controversial now, but I have a love-hate relationship with photography.
Yeah.
You know, I go back and forth with it on a weekly basis sometimes, where I love to make images and then I absolutely hate to make images at the same time. And it's, you know, that sort of shows, especially, you know, I did my FDA and then my BA top up at UCW, and then I worked in the film industry for a little over a year, I think it was. So I worked on short films, commercials. I worked on a film called The Festival, which I think I never went to the premiere. Long story long, I'm gonna get in trouble if they ever listen to this, but fuck it. The producers for that film were assholes, to say the least. I did not get along with them, and so I only did like a short period on that film. But anyways, and then went on a bit of a soul seeking journey. Ended up splitting up with a long-term partner, going through some deep depression, and then being like, let's move to America. Actually, let's not move to America. And then studying my master's. So yeah, you could say the least, it's scattered, but in all of that
made you as a person, didn't it?
Yeah,
all
definitely.
If that happened, you wouldn't be the person you are, you know?
Yeah, it's all life experience, 100%.
Exactly. That's what I say to everyone, like, no matter what you are going through, especially at this time even, like, you just got to do your own journey. Like, it's your journey, it's not anyone else's journey.
No, I like that.
You have to mould that journey into like how someone else wants that journey to be.
Yeah, and I think you have to, you know, especially as a creative, you're naturally going to bring elements of that past and that journey into your work, because, you know, as I said on the podcast the other day, I can't remember who was it with now, I think it was with Aidan. I'd say we were saying how, you know, your personal interests feed your work, and it's exactly the same whether you're an illustrator, a photographer, a filmmaker, whatever it is. And that kind of fed into when me and Mike actually started hanging out when I moved to Cheltenham and starting Coverless together. So Coverless has been quite a journey for both of us, actually, and definitely a learning curve. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say so, yeah. There's lots of things that at the start, obviously, we thought were great, but now on hindsight and reflection, we shouldn't have really jumped the gun.
Yeah.
But it's been great. Like, we've been able to engage with other people, not just from like Cheltenham University. So what Coverless is, obviously, we started the magazine to engage with students, because obviously Jacob and myself, when you leave university, if you do an arts degree or a course, you probably your prospects aren't as likely to get as first-time job. So
definitely
I wanted to help students actually have that natural pathway of progression. And this was just by creating, at the time, didn't we say it was like weekly zines? And we thought...
Yeah, so I think initially we were going to start a monthly zine. So every month we were going to release a new zine. And then we did volume 1.
Yes.
And realised that monthly is an absolute nightmare. We were quite lucky that a mutual friend of ours, actually, I can't remember how, I think yourself introduced me to him, but a chap called Mark Steen, who is based in Cheltenham. He runs a graphics design company. Very, very knowledgeable man. Very lucky to have him as a bit of an advisor and a good friend to me and Mike as well. Anyway, we had a chance to sit down with Mark Steen, and he sort of advised us to not do monthly, and also to maybe rethink our approach. And over time, we released volume 1. A couple of months later, we released volume 2, and then volume 3. So originally, we went from monthly to then doing sort of this triple saga of zines. And these zines, as Mike eloquently said, they're all to support young artists like myself and Mike. We understand that breaking into this industry is a nightmare, to say the least, and to get your work published, it's quite difficult. And when we say published, we don't mean on social media. We mean physical publications such as magazines, zines, books.
Like you said, like at the moment, just slightly off topic, like only now have I started to get recognition for the work I'm doing. And obviously, I've entered so many competitions and so many different things that I've done with it, and like I have been turned down. Like you got to expect it, but it's the way you bounce back. And it's just the grind from like 4 years ago to now. It's starting to like come into fruition and being accepted on certain like things. And I think in September I've got a trip to Paris lined up with Canon.
Nice.
Well, yeah,
that's gonna be sick.
It's starting to come good now. So that's the thing, and I that's my advice. Just don't stop what you're doing. Just keep going.
100%. I think that's being a creator, I think there's sort of two, well, there's more than two, but in my mind, how my mind works, there's 2 levels of creation. Oh, I thought you fell over then.
Oh, it's old age.
Oh, mate, tell me about it. My back's killing me. But anyway, I think for me personally, I see it as sort of these 2 different tiers. There's the tier where people create for a voice and for themselves. And then there's the tier of people creating to get known and also maybe make a living from this. And these 2 tiers, they do feed one another, and it's figuring out how to make that work is the hard thing, I think. Because to be a photographer, painter, whatever it is, if you're chasing it as a career and want to make a living from it, it's a whole different ball game, because it's no longer just about the work you're making. It's about how you're marketing that, how you're putting that out in a business sense, how you're going to bring in an audience, and all of these things. And
like I obviously I happily put out that I nerd out like crazy with photo books and stuff.
100%.
And like you said, like Instagram for me, a year ago, I thought, oh, it's nothing special. Like, it's just Instagram. Like, it's another platform for like social media, and
definitely,
I like pollute. It's a toxic environment. I don't like things like that. But I've realised that it is important. And I'm like pushing Instagram as hard as ever now. And I think that is the way it's moving out of getting your work seen. It's moving out of handing a portfolio to a business client. Most of the work I've had is through Instagram. Like, it's commissions through Instagram of like seeing my feed, and getting followed by major photographers is a helpful thing. Like, I've jumped from, you know me, I'm terrible with numbers. You're the king of it, but I think I had like 200 followers. That was in like 3-4 weeks ago, and then I just put a shout out and don't be like afraid to ask people.
Yeah, definitely.
and then it suddenly jumped up, and it's that's it. It's just about who you know and how you go about it.
Yeah, and in a weird way, you know, the industry, you know, I'm speaking retrospectively now because I wasn't part of it, but what I've read, etc. The industry sort of 5-10 years ago was very much word of mouth, especially the commission-based industry, you know, getting you know, into the Sunday Times magazine, whatever it might be. The dream. It was all word of mouth, and in a weird roundabout way it still is, but it's a different process, it's a different way. And I hate to say it, I think sometimes, you know, the photographers that have the big following on Instagram and have an audience, they're the ones that are, you know, getting the commissions, and that's no disrespect to them saying that their works, that they're not deserving of that. Of course they are. They've worked hard to probably build that audience, and I think we can use it as inspiration. But I think the playing field is maybe not as level as it once was.
Yeah, that's it. And like, obviously, just finishing uni and I'm going to be a graduate. I know that I'm not going to be able to go straight into a photography job. Like, it's such a saturated industry.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously I probably will end up working at McDonald's, unfortunately. But
which is still a well-paid job, might I add.
Yeah. No hate. But again, it's just about pushing it. Might have to freelance. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. But it's fine.
I think when I look at your work, I think it's more a case of you just need to keep making.
Yeah.
You know, you obviously have strong understandings of the work that you want to make, and you know, I've worked very closely with Mike in the past on previous books and projects, exhibitions, and your work is quite heavily theory based. It's based off of not only the idea that one has, but also the research that you've done to build up that understanding. Yeah. And I think the worst thing for you coming out of university now and being a graduate, the worst thing you can do is stop that process by any means.
Well, I think it's funny you say that, because I've reflected on it, and this isolation thing has actually made me more. I've picked up a camera again. Like, I don't know if you go through it. You go through stages where you enjoy taking photographs, and then the next minute you're like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I've just been creating like loads, and I've started to hand process everything myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw on your social media that you've now got a lab.
So I set up a lab in my mum's bathroom, because that's like the darkest room in the house.
Nice.
And then light sealed it. But it's just the process of like being able to go out, take the photos, come back and develop it, because you go through all the motions and you feel like you've actually done something for the work at the same time as having to save money. If you send it off to a lab in Bristol or London, you're looking at crazy prices.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah, so it's nice just to do. It's a different way of doing it, because I would never have thought to hand process myself anyway. But I've just gone down that route now, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I think there's a really nice crossover between, you know, producing a project, you know, in the sense of capturing your voice and the voices of others, and then also processing all of that. So, you know, me and Mike, we still shoot film, as I spoke with Livy about on the podcast. Film is, you know, I got a massive film camera collection now, which is probably one too many charity shops trips, but we still shoot a lot of film, color, black and white, and you know, you do lose a little bit of the connection with that film when you're not processing it. So when I was shooting Treasure Island, which is primarily shot on like 120 Kodak Portra, the classic that everybody uses in documentary photography, that was all lab processed and then scanned myself. And there was part of me that wishes I had a color processing room to process it myself, to be even more hands-on with that body of work. Yeah,
that was late nights, wasn't it? Scanning in and being able to, but that's the thing, being able to see it yourself. And obviously I gave you a hand in curating that book. Like, it's that commitment of being able to go to Port Talbot, shoot it week in, week out, and you meet more people. I find that photography is such a sociable like genre. Like, I would never have met somebody I have done if I hadn't have done it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely strong social ties, especially if you're working as a documentary photographer.
Yeah, and I use my camera as a boundary to break that, because like I suffer badly from social anxiety. So I find that that's like my coping mechanism. Like I can go out and take a photo of someone, and I can do it to a stranger. I can go up to a stranger and just take their photograph. But if I didn't have my camera, you asked me to go and talk to someone that I don't know, and I'll be like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah, it gives you a reason to talk. I think it gives you a reason to be in that situation, which is strange, because for me, I'm the other way around nowadays. It sounds really weird, but you know, with regards to sort of social anxiety, as I said before to some people, and I think I've put on the podcast, you know, I've had my up and down battles with it, and photography has helped me cope with it. But sometimes that camera actually creates even more anxiety for myself, in the sense of there may be somebody on the street, or you know, somebody on the street that I want to take their portrait of, and I have the camera in my hands, and I can see them looking at me with the camera, and then suddenly it's this weird, like.
Remember that I think it must have been, wasn't it like the second or third night when?
Oh my god, are you on about the tuxedo guy?
Oh, that was such a.
He was such a nice bloke.
Bloke, full blazer, tuxedo, briefcase. I was like, Jay, you need to go and take that photo right now. And you're like, no, I'm not going to do it. I was like, go do it.
Yeah.
Like, that shot. You didn't paste, did you? Oh, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I turned it into a bit of street art. I think like 2 weeks before I left Cheltenham, I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to put street art up everywhere. So I started doing that.
It's about just doing it almost. You kind of can't hold back.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, that sort of reflects in the projects yourself has made, you know, looking through. I remember Sparrows being the project about your grandparents, which I helped sort of curate a little bit on there, but just in general, a really interesting body of work. And then also, you know, you're producing stuff in isolation, aren't you?
Yeah, so Sparrows, that project was based off of my grandparents and the way they've lived in Weston-super-Mare for quite a long time. And it was also my way of coping with the fact that my grandma's got really bad dementia.
Of course.
So it was a project in which I could take photos as a memory and almost archive them. But it was also a sentimental piece in the fact that I've made this photo book that now will last me forever. And that project was probably one of the hardest ones I've shot, because it was almost, I felt as if I was an intruder, because before that project, I'd never actually gone into the remit of shooting someone in their home and on a constant basis, just following them around. But then it's funny you say that, because that's what sparked my interest, for shooting portraiture. My grandma's the loveliest lady, but she would tell me off if I put a camera in her face.
Yeah.
So it was just there was that anxiety of, do I take her photo? And I was like, look, I'm just going to take her photo, and then the stuff I've got from that, it came out really nice. And then obviously we sequenced it, didn't we?
Yeah, I remember sequencing Sparrows, and I think especially, you know, yourself moving forward with, you know, other bodies of work. You know, you did the pigeon racing. The name eludes me at the moment, but
Home Straight.
Which one?
Home Straight.
Home Straight, that's it. Which is about sort of pigeon racers here in Somerset. You can see that you're not the techniques of image making, but the process of dealing with people on a one-to-one basis in their homes that you learnt during Sparrows sort of went over into Home Straight.
I've gone into strangers' houses as well, and completely defied the odds of, I wouldn't have never done that before.
It's a weird thing to do.
It's so strange. But that project is probably the one project this year that I think is properly I wouldn't say it's not an ego thing, but it's pushed me up as a photographer.
It's done really well.
I've had lots of recognition for it, and I think I'm going to continue shooting that after lockdown, because obviously I had the conversation with you, didn't I? I was stuck in two mindsets, because obviously they raced their pigeons in August, And I was like, I really wanted to photograph that because it's a bit boring just taking photos of some like random person in the house.
Yeah, it can be if the context isn't there. But I think with Home Straight, the context was always there. That these individuals, their interest is pigeon racing. And for me, as a viewer, and I'm sure others that have seen the body of work, or if you haven't, make sure you go check it out. It's more a case of you've never seen it, so it's this whole new world.
And there's characters as well. I think the youngest person that I met, or the youngest kid, he was like 5, and he was like holding a pigeon. I was like, I am not holding that. It completely freaked me out. He was like, I watch them all the time. I was like, well, yeah, okay. It's a funny one. That's the first photo book that I properly like printed as well. The university have got it at the moment, annoyingly.
But you'll get it back, I'm sure.
Back, and then I'm going to do another run of it. So hopefully my goal is to keep shooting it in August, and then I'll sell it after that.
Which, we'll have to maybe do through Coverless. Little plug there.
I'm going to try and see it. Like, shout out to Manship, George Manship. If you know him, you know him.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can get him to print it. I'm going to try and teach him to like bookbind.
Interesting. I like that. That would be cool to have George making books. I'd love to join in on that little seminar. So, with yourself, obviously, like everybody else being at lockdown, I've seen that you're making work at home with your family. What's the process there? This is for your final major, right?
So obviously we were talking earlier about the project on sight loss and blindness.
Yeah.
And that was my FMP, and then obviously coronavirus struck, and I was like, I couldn't go and see all the people I wanted to see. They all rang up in the space of a day cancelling on me, which is fair enough.
Yeah, it's the world we're in, sadly.
So I was thinking on the spot, I was like, how can I keep myself active shooting and creating whilst being in lockdown? And I was like, I just pick up a camera, and I've started to document my mum, my dad, my sister, just how like they're coping with isolation. And it's gone through a stage of, at the start, it was very much like looking at people and relationships, but I've also started to look at like the landscape around me. So obviously I live within the Mendip Hills, and it's having these green spaces that we're so lucky to have compared to people that will be stuck in high-rise flats. Like, you can't escape that.
Yeah, I think it's I'm lucky as well to be in a position where I live in a fair-sized house with a back and front garden, so the feeling of entrapment that I feel is so minuscule compared to somebody who might be in a situation where they're living in a city flat. And I think with the work that you've been making, you can see that journey of exploration that you're on to try and figure out what this all means, and also the relationships that you're developing with your family.
Definitely, it's been a weird experience because we're stuck in such a confinement that you would assume that you would struggle to take photos, and there'll be a lot of repetition. So obviously, repetition in photography is where you repeat the same image.
Yeah.
But I found it a lot easier to actually create work of lots of multiple avenues. So I've looked at people, landscape, life, still life.
Interesting.
Completely shot it out of my natural comfort zone of colour, and I've gone into black and white. I think it adds more of a relationship, and there's more of a meaning to it. So that's the way I'm going with it at the moment. I've just finished making the book dummy.
Which I can't wait to see, by the way.
I'll ping it to you later.
I need to look at it.
It's got some... I curated a poet to write the forward for it, so that's how to introduce the work, and I got that for your book actually.
Treasure Island. I forgot about that.
You had a poem in, didn't you, right at the front?
Yeah, I worked with. She's quite a well-known Welsh. Well, she's actually English, but lives in Port Talbot. Her name's Sally. Oh, I'm gonna butcher her name now. I think it's Sally Jones. I think I'll have to double check that. Anyways, she was she sort of really helped me get the exhibition in Port Talbot. She was one of the heads at Carmel Chapel where I did the exhibition in Port Talbot, and then through that, she had an amazing understanding of Port Talbot and the history and everything about it. She was one of these sort of ladies where you could sit down with a cup of tea or coffee and you could be there for 8 hours with a notepad full of ideas and new avenues as a photographer to sort of venture down. But anyways, yeah, I didn't even know she was a poet until somebody else pulled me to the side and were like, you do realise she's a really well-known poet. She writes great poetry. I was like, really? And then we had a conversation, and yeah, she wrote a poem for Treasure Island, which ended up in the book, which eventually when that gets published or I self-publish it, it will be out there. But that's cool that you've gone down a similar route.
I went down that route because I don't want to bore people with long text. You know, I'm myself dyslexic person. I can't read text for days. Like,
no, I get you.
So bored of it after a while. So I was like, I want to do something different. So I commissioned this girl to write it, and it's lovely, the piece that she's wrote, and it's all about lockdown and isolation and how we do feel encased in this kind of bubble. That there is light at the end of the tunnel, but you just got to persevere. And it kind of is funny because she's referenced myself as a photographer in the work.
Interesting.
But it's yeah, I'm not going to let too much out.
It's like some Deadpool third wall breaking.
Yeah. I'd like to get feedback for sure.
For sure, man. We'll put it out and we'll put it in circulation and we'll get people to give you some feedback on that, definitely. So yeah, where can people find your work? Social medias, websites?
Social media, yeah, it's just Mike Butt Photo on Instagram. Website just www.mikebuttphoto.com. I think that's all my socials.
Perfect. So anyone who's listening or watching this, you can find the links to Mike's work down below, whether that's on Spotify, Anchor, or you're watching it on IGTV. It's good to see you, man. It's good to sit down and have a chat.
I've been here for ages.
I know, man. I honestly, I'm really toying, once this lockdown's over, just pulling the trigger on a venue and just getting a load of people together and having like a meet up, having a drink, like, and just all of us together, like people who are on the podcast or not, just getting a group of us together, because all of us creators are so isolated right now, and we need to get back to working with each other and talking and making. And I think, something that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm off to shoot this afternoon, so...
Yeah, man. Honestly, if you guys haven't seen Mike's work, make sure you go check it out. If you've been watching this podcast on Instagram TV, you'll see over his left shoulder, there's a picture from his project with the blind people. And yeah, make sure you go check out his website and his social medias.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate that.
No worries at all, man. Well, look, it's good speaking with you.
And you.
And
I'll keep you updated on what I'm up to.
That's what I like to hear. Also, we are making some moves with Coverless.
Yes, I was going to say, we've got something in the pipeline.
We do.
Just waiting on confirmation now, so... Definitely.
We did Time to Engage,
yeah.
Which was the exhibition here in King Alfred School. Shout out to Becky, who helped us put that on. And yeah, we've got another exhibition coming soon in Somerset, but we won't say where or when yet, because obviously we don't know when. But...
Sorry, I'm gonna do my thing.
You're gonna do your thing.
We do this. Shall we do that?
Go on. Now.
If there's a graphic designer that is listening to your podcast,
yeah,
I would be interested to get in conversation, because I've got an idea that I'd like for Coverless.
Honestly, I might have somebody for you.
Okay, send them my way.
I will. I'll link you two together. See what you can do.
Jeez.
But yeah, guys, we're working on some new stuff at Coverless. As we've previously mentioned, volume 1, 2 and 3 are over on Issue at the moment if you want to read them for free digitally, and also I'm sure Mike's book is up on Issue as well, Sparrows, I believe.
Yes, yeah. I've got 2 up there. I've got the one I did on Burnham. Cool. And the one I did on Sparrows.
Perfect. So yeah, as I said, guys, all the links and everything will be down below. And if you could go give Mike a follow, that would be fantastic, and give some feedback on his work.
That'd be great.
Perfect, man. Well, look, take care of yourself. Keep shooting. And also, I'm going to send you a load of black and white film to develop to keep you busy.
Send it my way.
I will, mate.
Well, if you charge, yeah. I'll do it.
I'll throw you some like nice Italian coffee.
That'll do me.
There you go. Perfect. All right, dude. Well, look, take care of yourself, man. And I'll see you very soon.
Yourself.
All right, man. Bye. So that is it for episode 6 of the Faces for the Future podcast. I want to send a massive thank you to Mike Butt for joining me. and sharing some really interesting insights into his projects, such as Sparrow Home Straight, and also how he is dealing with this lockdown that we find ourselves in the UK. If you guys want to see Mike's work, everything is linked below, whether you are listening or watching to this podcast via Anchor, Spotify or Instagram TV. Please make sure you go give him a follow and also let him know if you enjoyed the podcast. And if you could do the same with Faces for the Future, we have an Instagram. It's FFTF Podcast on Instagram. If you guys could go over there, give us a follow and also let us know what you think to the podcast. We'll be back very soon with another episode of the Faces for the Future podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying this series so far, and we can't wait to keep making them.